Hello. All right. So today is the 6th of January, 2026. My goodness, 2026. Let me check the volume here. I'm fine, I think. Okay. So this is what I'm going to do today. I'm going to engage in a what if. It's a little bit of a game. I've been thinking about this, and it's about, what is happening in Latin America and so on. What if, for example, I'm not saying that this is the case. I'm not even speculating. I'm just playing a game here of what if. Imagine that the West or the United States has decided, or global governance decided that, okay, so our intention was to, global governance, but it seems that we have come up against two walls, that is China and Russia. So we might not be able to do it um, as easily as perhaps we thought. And so instead of going towards global dominance, we concentrate first on the Americas, American hemisphere, the Western hemisphere, the whole of the Americas. Okay, I'm not saying that this is even likely, okay, because I'm going to talk about the temperament of nations, not about strategic or what is possible. Um, so we concentrate on dominion of the whole of the Americas. So we have access to, um, the raw materials and the gas and the oil and everything that we need. Okay, in that way, we can get as many resources as China might have, as Russia has, and so on. And then we'll proceed from there. But let us say that we're going to concentrate on just dominion of the whole American continent. What would happen then? I've been thinking about this. This is a game of chess, perhaps, not even of chess, but um, an experiment. And I want to look at it from the point of temperament and style of response, the psychology of nations, okay, more than, you know, tactics and strategies and so on. So I want to look at what they are about and then how they would react and what the world would look like. So first, the temperament of the United States of America. Uh, Three things really I'm going to deal with. What the American move would represent temperamentally, okay? What China would or would not do, and how Russia also would react. And I'm going to look at this, the psychology of these three nations. Just playing a game here, really. Don't take me all that seriously, but and uh, and let's proceed from there. So the American strategic temperament first, needless to say, compressed. Okay, America thinks in terms of scale and speed and visible outcomes, and can we say energy over elegance. All right. The American instinct is, does this work now? And can we do it bigger? Power is something to be, for the American mind, I'm generalizing, of course, for the American mind, power is to be exercised, is to be demonstrated, is to be justified publicly. America is not an old civilization, it is an engine. I think that matters. America's unique operating logic is that the US assumes that the future is open, problems are solvable, size beats refinement, failure can be acceptable if followed by repetition or doubling down. Most other powers assume that the future is constrained, that problems are managed. There is a difference here, that refinement beats brute force, that failure carries memory and perhaps even shame. So they treat the world like an inheritance. America treats the world like a model, a template to work on. If I could use one of those little fable metaphors that I like to use sometimes as examples, I would say to explain this, the fable would be the fox who turned belief into tools. And this is the little fable that I made up. A fox saw a river and said, "We should cross it." And everyone started arguing, "No, you can't cross a river. How can you possibly say that you can? No, we can't cross a river." The fox, instead of arguing, built a bridge instead. It wasn't very pretty. It was kind of ugly and loud and crooked, but it worked very well. And soon the wagons crossed and the towns appeared, and no one ever asked again the old question whether or not a river could be crossed. That's it. There was a bridge there. The moral of the story, I think, is that those who act turn opinions into facts. And that is what the American temperament mentality is. Now, very quickly, how about China? I'm just talking about temperaments here. China tends to concentrate or cultivate awareness of situations. It reads intentions rather than statements or proclamations. Indirect action, indirect. Timing, timing, timing. That's absolutely essential to the Chinese mind. Flexibility. They're comfortable with ambiguity and face saving. If they are to engage in deception, for example, they're more likely to deceive by misdirection or even silence, timing also. So you end up saying, "No one said anything here, and yet everything changed. What happened?" The little fable that I would put here is the crane who waited for winter. A crane, a little bird, watch others fight over a pond. All the other little birds fighting over the pond. And the little crane did nothing, just stood there. We have a saying in Spanish when you want to say that someone stood there deadpan with a deadpan face. We say he put on his Chinese face on. Yeah, you can't even read almost what they're thinking. Okay, so the little crane did nothing, but you see, winter came and the pond froze, and all the other little birds that were fighting left. And when the ice melted, the crane drank alone, had the whole pond for itself. And what is the moral of this little fable? Time defeats strength when strength cannot wait. It's a question of patience. Time defeats strength when strength cannot wait. In a situation of America versus China, again, I have to say it again, please don't take all that seriously. I'm just playing a little bit. All right, I'm not suggesting that this is likely to happen or anything, but in a situation like that, where the United States just took over the whole of the Americas, um, America versus China, China plays long games, quiet positioning, non-confrontation, non-open confrontation if they can avoid it, until it is decisive, until the moment is right, the time is right, everything is right. If not, they're quite happy to wait. Non-confrontation, openly. America doesn't plays differently. America is louder games. Yes, America is comfortable with immediate pressure. Yes, forcing moves. So China prefers the opponent to age out. Yeah, America wants its opponent to fold now. This is patience versus acceleration. How about Russia's temperament? It's different. It's different. The core traits. Russia has a great deal of existential intelligence, existential survival. It has been invaded so many times, and long history. Survival is essential, existential intelligence, intuitive in that sense. And what matters when nothing works? Russia is comfortable with suffering, with enduring, with sacrifice, with contradiction. They can do that. They have a suspicion of appearances. Um, they also have a readiness for breakdown, reversal, scorch earth. They're good at that, at surviving at that. Because Russia learned early that systems and structures and all that fail, only people and will and endurance remains. Victory comes not from elegance, but from breaking the opponent's coherence. In deception, I think they're good at deception by creating chaos, deception by emotional saturation, exhausting the enemy. Deception by making, if they're using deception, if they're trying to deceive you, deception by making the opponent misjudge how much pain is acceptable. The opponent always think that they're going to break much, much earlier than they do if they do. The opponent assumes limits on Russia that Russia does not have, that they do not exist. Russia dominates when rules collapse, stakes become existential, suffering is unavoidable, time becomes attritional. They can go on forever. They exhaust you as an opponent. Russia wins by redefining the cost function, making victory too expensive for the opponent, and turning endurance, of which they're really capable, turning endurance into a weapon. In other words, the American will ask, how much pain can I inflict on you? The Russian will ask, How much pain can you endure? Yeah. So the little fable for well, it has to be a bear, right? There. The bear who would not bleed. So a bear lived in a forest that burned every few years. A bear, yeah. Other animals, when the fires came, fled, yeah. The bear stayed there. He lost its fur, it lost its skin, sometimes even his teeth. But somehow the fire always moved on, and the bear stood there. And hunters learned something frightening. The bear did not need to win, you see. He only needed to last, to win. And the moral here, I think, is that okay, those who fear pain cannot defeat those who are willing to accept it. Those who fear pain cannot defeat easily, at any rate, those who are willing to accept it. I think that is overall the temperament of each country. Now, going back to my little game there, the imaginary game, what the American move would mean in uh, the move to take the whole of the Americas and make it, their own dominion. Um, I don't want to get into, well, they already have dominion. I'm just, if the whole thing belonged to them, okay. Uh, as I said at the beginning, if suppose the US would abandon, or the elites or whoever they are, would abandon this global dominance and consolidate just their power to the Western Hemisphere, as a prologue, obviously, to then fight Russia and China, but concentrate on the Western Hemisphere. Um, And this would not only be merely for America strategic retreat. They wouldn't necessarily like it very much because it would also be a reversion to a classical American temperament, a frontier mentality applied to the hemisphere. There would be bounds and limits to the hemisphere. This is a sort of would be Anglo-American strategic culture under stress, I think. If we cannot shape the whole system, we will dominate only half of it. Um, okay, decisive, coercive, perhaps impatient. But to China, this move would not read, I don't think, would not read primarily as aggression. It would read as American fear, that is what they would read, and American contraction. I think that matters enormously. What China would not do in that situation, given the Chinese strategic temperament, I think several things, several responses would be extremely unlikely. No military confrontation in Latin America from China. Why not? Because it's just common sense to them. Not because China can't or wouldn't be able to, but because it goes against China's deep aversion to far from home force projection. Far from home, no, they have never done it actually. It creates uncontrollable um, escalation pathways. It would force China into America's preferred grammar of power, as sociologists say, as politicians say. The it, it it would force China to be in to come into the Americans' hands, really, the underlying structure or rules through which power is exercised and maintained or challenged in a given context. China does not fight where logistics are asymmetrical. The geography or symbolic terrains favors the opponent, and this would be too obvious. No. Or when victory requires spectacle rather than endurance, they never fight that way. No symmetrical response. China would not go for territorial acquisition, overt regime change, sponsorship, or anything like that. Uh, One of China's likely responses, I think, would be counter enclosure without confrontation. What do I mean? A counter reaction. If the US consolidates the Americas, then China's response would not be to challenge that enclosure, but to make it strategically irrelevant or weak over time. Timing is everything. Over time, somehow they would find the way to make it weak. Many, many ways. It would accept the American, this is ours, this is all ours, the American hemisphere publicly. They would accept it publicly. China would likely avoid rhetorical escalation. They tend to keep quiet. Frame the US move as now you are, it's your regional responsibility kind of thing. Emphasize sovereignty and non-interference. Why? Uh, because you see, because acceptance, yes, okay, you dominate that whole atmosphere, hemisphere. Acceptance denies the US the drama that it needs. By accepting it, it denies the US the sound and the resonance and the noise and the drama that it needs. The Chinese instinct is if your opponent is making noise, deprive them of sound, deprive them of resonance, take the microphone away. It would probably accelerate Eurasian density. China's real counter move would be elsewhere. Intensify integration of East Asia, Central Asia, the Middle East, Africa. The Middle East, yeah, but that's the United States is there. That is what Israel is for. Yeah. They would find ways. Deepen land-based trade, energy, logistic corridors, increase the choking maritime points. In chess terms, it would be to ignore the opponent's flank and attack and dominate the center. If the US locks itself into hemispheric management, China turns Eurasia into the primary engine of growth, the main market, the decisive technological ecosystem. Financially, quiet warfare. China would likely expand non-dollar trade settlements, strengthen parallel financial plumbing, offer credit, infrastructure, and technology without political alignment. They're never interested in who is governing your country or coups or regime change. They don't care as long as they can do the trade. They don't interfere into your own political system. And this is crucial. China would not attempt ideological conversion. Instead, it would let states participate without choosing sides, make the American hemispheric control look expensive and brittle. It would be expensive. They would make sure that it would be very expensive. And this would not be difficult, I don't think, because um, the United States actually, it's we know it runs really for the benefits of corporations mainly. Yes, China sees itself as social. How do they describe themselves? Socialism with Chinese characteristics, right? Um, Perhaps it's better capitalism with Chinese characteristics, actually, because they do allow capitalism to flourish, but always the state, the nation comes first, the corporation and the profits and the all that sort of thing comes second. In other words, if you're a corporation, well, they have all this institutionalized, of course, but the corporations and the money making and the profit making, if it goes against the interests of the states, they will be done with. Okay, so it's the nation first and then make the profit, okay, as much as you want. We don't care about that as long as you are prepared. When we tell you now you change and manufacture this for the good of the nation, that you are prepared to do it. Okay, uh, so capitalism up to a point, as long as it does not interfere with what they see the well-being of the nation. And in the United States, that is obviously not the case. Actually, you could say in the United States is capitalism with American characteristics, because capitalism was about free trade, yeah. But now it's sort of more corporate capitalism. So it looks sometimes as if it is corporations first and nation second. And then what they would also do is make Chinese participation in your country look boring. Boring. They never want to be in the front row there, but indispensable though. China's strength is not inspiration, but is habit formation. And of course, the very important Chinese thing is timing warfare, waiting out the enclosure, the Americas, the hemispheric enclosures. I think this is an important point, and perhaps the most civilizational difference, really, because China thinks in cycles, not moments. From a Chinese perspective, the US enclosing the Americans is they would see it as a temporary solution to a permanent, ongoing anxiety. They would wait it out. Managing territories drains, every empire knows this, drains attention, drains legitimacy. Eventually, you have people who are not content, drains legitimacy, drains resources. Control creates obligations. Obligations accumulate frictions. China would bet that Latin America would bet on Latin America would eventually if not immediately, but certainly eventually become politically volatile, that a sort of a nationalism would resurface, uh, which it's very likely because it's been happening for a while. But it's not, the movement is not very large, but even now a lot of Latin Americans are saying that their weakness comes from having been divided into little countries, that if they have any hope in the future they have to unite, if not into one country, into one civilization or one something, but they have to fight together. It is starting. We can see it in several countries already, being led by Argentina of all places. But in any case, it is happening. China would bet on that resurgence. Yeah. Um, and the problem is that when that happens, uh, American domestic patience erodes. Um, America is impatient with time. So China's move is not to would not be to break the enclosure and fight it, but to outlast it. The deeper logic why this fits the Chinese temperament at the civilizational level, this reflects a profound contrast. The American strategic instinct is to resolve problems through decisive action, yeah? Convert uncertainty into control. It prefers, and this is unlike the British perhaps, I'll have to do something about the British, they prefer visible dominance over latent influence. They prefer visible dominance to behind the scenes, more kind of behind the scenes influence. And they believe that initiative itself creates legitimacy. The Chinese strategic instinct is to allow opponents to over-define their commitments. Go ahead. Yeah. Let the structure do the work that force would do badly, perhaps. Treat time as a weapon, not as a constraint. Time is a weapon. And win by making resistance unnecessary, not impossible, unnecessary. So all this, the art of war, Sun Tzu, the Sun Tzu line that matters most here is not about deception. It is about avoiding the enemy's strength. Full blown like that. Avoid that. So a hemispheric America is strong locally, would be, but they would try to narrow it globally. China would not challenge the strength. It would expand the world around it. So, in summary, if the US says we will own our half of the world, China would reply, then we will make the other half sufficient. No war, no confrontation, no grand declaration, just denser networks, longer horizons, fewer commitments, more patience. They would wait until in time, the American enclosure would begin to look less like dominance and more like self-containment. They would look less like being dominant and more like self-containment and isolationists, I suppose. And how about Russia? Well, how would, in this imaginary game I'm playing, how would Russia interpret and exploit this same American move? I think the contrast is interesting, actually, in a very different way, though. We'll keep the same rules, okay? We're talking about temperament. We're not talking about capability or feasibility or tactics or anything like that, okay? So, I'll talk about how Russia would read the American hemispheric turn, what Russia would instinctively do first, how Russia's behavior would differ sharply from China's, and the structural danger Russia would create, often unintentionally, actually. How Russia would interpret the American move? Well, where China would read contraction, Russia would read abandonment, the abandonment of global dominance. Oh, okay, so you gave up on this. All right. An American withdrawal from global dominance, even if compensated by consolidation in the Americas continent. Moscow, I think, would interpret it as a moral victory. Hey, no longer global dominance. Okay. A moral victory, proof that pressure works, confirmation that the post-Cold War order is reversible. And this is crucial. Russia is not primarily a system builder, as the United States is. Russia is mainly is better at as a system breaker. What do I mean? It's because it has a historical memory of herself being encircled and humiliated and so on. It's better at surviving, breaking that, than on building, system builder. So the American move would not register as strategic prudence to the Russians, but as the hegemon blinking. Russia's first instinct would be a test, not a plan. Unlike China, Russia would not respond by building a parallel world. It would respond by probing for weaknesses. I know we talk about America poking the bear, and they do, all the time, just poking. I don't know that there is a difference. That there is a nuance difference between poking and probing. I don't quite know. But the Russians don't poke at you, don't put their finger in your eye, but they probe for weaknesses. Symbolic moves designed to force a reaction. It does not wait for the whole structure to mature. They actually go about kicking the pillars of the building just to see which wobbles, which part wobbles. Yeah. So Russia's strategic style is presence over patience. And here's the sharpest contrast with China. China's logic is to minimize exposure. If you don't see them, that's great. Maximize your options. Win by accumulation, little by little, gradually. Russia's logic is to maximize presence, force recognition, win by disruption if they can. Russia needs to be seen as relevant. China doesn't want to, it doesn't need to be seen. It needs to be felt. And if you don't see them, that's even better. We have did I tell you this already? I don't know. I don't know whether I have told you already that in Spanish we have a saying, a deadpan face is, we call it the Chinese face. So, and he was there and everyone was attacking him and he was there, put his Chinese face on, and that's, I think I told you already. So in this, so Russia would likely insert itself into little holes and little vacuums left by the United States. It would probably seek visible geopolitical gains, certainly favor moves that humiliate or shock rather than endure. Russia and Latin America, it would be, in this situation, would be they would play a different game from China. Russia would not seek to obviously dominate Latin America, but it would seek to weaponize it symbolically. So you could expect arms sales, energy deals, security cooperation, highly visible diplomatic theater. Not because these would change the balance of power, but because they signal defiance. They would provoke Washington, it would be constant, and create the impression of global reach. You see, Russia actually understands something that China avoids, that annoyance is a form of leverage. It is. The Chinese don't even want to annoy you, they just work around you. The Russians know that annoyance is a form of leverage. The Russian bet would be escalation as insurance. And here's the dangerous part. Russia's civilizational memory teaches Russia that security comes from fear and respect comes from not avoiding risks, and that if you can get the opponent to be exhausted, you will have peace. Peace follows exhaustion. So Russia in that situation might deliberately raise the temperature, create multiple low-level crises, force the US to choose between hemispheric focus and global reaction. This is not long-term optimal, but Russia has rarely played for optimality. Russia has always played for survival with dignity. The structural difference, in one sentence, if the US would enclose the Americas, China would say, good, fewer variables here. And Russia would say, now let's see how far we can go. So the paradox, who benefits more? Ironically, China would benefit quietly. Russia would perhaps benefit more noisily, but probably the US would suffer internally because hemispheric control demands constant coercion, political legitimacy abroad, moral coherence at home. And China would avoid all three, and Russia would exploit all three. So, a final sort of summary to this situation, this imaginary world. The power that waits reshapes the world. The power that proves destabilizes it. The power that encloses itself, as would eventually be the case, must explain itself again and again and again. And that is my video for today. On Thursday, I'm working on the second part, the second episode of the Architects of Power. Those people have started with, with Richelieu, yeah. The people who actually changed the world, but we hardly know them. The power behind the throne. I'm working on the second episode, and I'll put it up on Thursday, hopefully at 8 o'clock. So anyway, thank you for listening, and goodbye.